Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of IOHR TV. The Rohingya community and other migrants have been the target of online hate speech in Malaysia to the point that many were scared of leaving their homes for the fear of being attacked. Fake news has been spread to scapegoat them. In Malaysia, unfortunately, many Rohingya and other undocumented people have also been detained following a contradictory government response to the outbreak of COVID-19. Maalini Ramalo, Senior Manager of the NGO Development of Human Resources for Rural Areas, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be speaking to you.
Rohingya have been the target of hate speech and fake news all over Malaysian social media. They have been threatened with murder and sexual violence depicted as animals. What is happening in Malaysia?
Yes, there has been a mass expression and torrent display of hatred that was observed on social media, initially targeting the Rohingyan communities and then escalating to other refugees as well as the migrant communities in Malaysia. Three major events really contributed to sort of encouraging anyone on social media to sort of say whatever they felt like. It's probably the first clusters of COVID positive cases that actually came from a tabligh cluster. So tabligh is actually the pilgrim, prayers that was done in Malaysia among the Muslim communities. And of course, the government had given out several instructions asking Malaysians who attended and anyone who attended the tabligh gathering to come forward and get themselves tested. And actually, till date, they do make up half the proportion of COVID positive cases. There were several reports that I think media did play a role, saying that till date, none of the refugees or migrants who have come forward, and that is posing us a threat or an impact. And then the largest contributor definitely came from a situation when a few troubled Rohingyan refugee youths who allegedly demanded for citizenship, they do not represent the entire refugee community. I think it was a frustration that came from that group particularly, and they own it. And around the same time, the Malaysian government also refused a boat full of Rohingyan refugees that asked for asylum. So we did earlier, before the MCO, the Movement Control Order, we did have one boat and they were accepted, and this was the second boat that has been wanting to get in. And so this kept the hate speech afloat when Malaysians at large were divided between providing humanitarian support and more refusing as the country is going through something.
And we also need to consider, I suppose, that this has happened in a very delicate time for your country in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, when everyone stay at home means, I think, more time on social media. And so everyone's attention seems to have, properly really focused at this and really blew things out of proportion.
As you said, one of the factors was the spread of several videos where the Rohingya were demanding citizenship and other legal rights in Malaysia. Were these videos real? And even if so, what does this tell us about discrimination in Malaysia?
I do think many people, I don't know who are behind this, but they did take advantage and falsely try to really manipulate the communities, the nation in general. I myself have came across several videos and several photographs where the videos say something completely different, where you don't even comprehend, it's not even audible to you what's being spoken. And then there is subtitle that is, sort of done in the Malaysian language, Malay, and it is written that that person is demanding for citizenship. I think people just refuse to accept the fact that not having a nationality means that they don't have any other access to survive, and whether they are able to put themselves in the same shoes and think about a day where they're without nationality, what happens to them? Not having a nationality, not having a place to belong, is very, very painful. It is not just emotionally, but every little thing that you do, even to get a driving license, to get a job, or even to be able to survive through a job that you have just gotten, or to get that full employee benefit, is just not possible.
Has online hate speech escalated into physical violence?
I think I'm not just going to stick to physical violence, but it's also inclusive of hate speech, mental torture, and discrimination of any source that would impact someone. Even activists from the Rohingya community, they were severely targeted. For every post that they were putting up, people were just rushing in to comment and say that you should go back to your country. We give you rights to stay here, and you are demanding citizenship. And I think that was really concerning to the extent that some really sort of had to shut down their social media because the amount of threats that they were receiving. Because DHRRA as an organization, we were providing emergency relief to the to the vulnerable community. We started receiving calls from the communities themselves saying that we don't feel safe, and we have money to buy things, but we don't have the guts to get out of our house. People around here know us, that we are Rohingyans. What would happen to us? So I do think that fear in someone to call you and say that it's enough of violence, I think.
What has been the government's response so far?
I was genuinely disappointed. The government instead was reassuring other Malaysians that no, they don't have rights here. Refugees don't have equal rights as Malaysians. They can't seek equal treatment here. So the government was not supporting the most vulnerable. Well, I don't think it's a matter of support, but at a time where there should be, a humanitarian approach to that situation, I think the government just gave assurance to the rest of the Malaysians that, oh no, we are not. You guys are our people, and they are not, and there's no equal treatment here. Actually, at the end of March, when we were really battling, the pandemic, the Ministry of Health issued a circular. As I mentioned earlier, there was a public cluster gathering where they were calling out people to come for testing, and they actually came up with a circular for payment for COVID-19 testing and treatment for non-Malaysian. So non-Malaysian would literally mean any refugees, foreigners, and any other communities in general. So the government assured that undocumented persons, that no action will be taken, should they come forward for testing. And, that move was really commendable by every local or international NGOs as a good practice in line with recommended public health measures. However, that effort was significantly marred when the mass immigration raids that was taking place, and I do think it was really a human rights violation and serious public health implication when that took place. And when these raids were taking place, they were not obviously going all out to detain people. Instead, areas where there were a certain high number of COVID positive cases, that area was sort of barbed with wires, and that area would be called as enhanced movement control order, which means we would have personnels, actually army personnel, standing around that place.
Because of the movement control order and legislation enacting containment measures, the Malaysian government has detained stateless people and undocumented people and is planning to deport them. At the beginning of June 2020, at least 270 Rohingya refugees were detained. Tell me more about the detention of vulnerable people in the country.
Just before we get into the vulnerable community, I would really like to point out that the greatest risk is to the law enforcement at the detention center, who was responsible to detain them or bring them and categorize them. So if we had communities who were positively infected during the raids, they would potentially, and they are possibly infected right now. As we speak, we do have 3 live clusters ongoing in the detention centers, where previously there were none. It was really heartbreaking to see children and mothers who were escorted in the detention vans. And of course, among them, we could have undocumented asylum seekers, possibilities of children, say, if they were not detained with the families, whether they would be trafficked, in future times, what happens to them, and stateless persons, and maybe some other undocumented refugees as well among them, and what would happen to them, as the government would call them, as illegal migrants. So you will not be treated fairly. And I think that is very dangerous for us not to be able to differentiate between the different categories of communities that are being detained at the moment.
Overcrowded centers could become new hotspots for the virus. What is the government's stance in relation to this?
Apart from the active detentions that has taken place, I'm really unsure at the moment whether they will continue or they would hold any. But apart from the detentions that have taken in place, I think I was told that they are assessing those who are illegal in their terms to be prepared for deportation, and those who can continue living in Malaysia would be released. I believe this is the active efforts that have been put in place, but I was also informed through the live press statement by the defense minister that no international NGOs or even local NGOs, I believe, is allowed into the detention centers at the moment because of the risk that it has put in place. So I think we're really unsure how this will turn into, whether more detentions will take place and how are they dealing with this. But there are active clusters ongoing in the detention centers, and they very much would be, I believe, the second or third largest cluster contributing to the total COVID positive cases in the country.
What kind of work are you doing there on the ground to support these people?
DHRRA, as an organization, along with 20 other NGO coalition grassroots NGOs, we got together and formed an initiative known as COVID Care MY. So, pretty much we raised funds, about 800,000 ringgit Malaysia, from individuals, from foundations, organizations. And our goal is to reach out to any people who are affected because of the movement control order, where they cannot access any of their daily wages anymore, or any other support they would need. So that's also inclusive of the frontliners and other vulnerable communities, such as the refugees, the migrants, stateless people in Malaysia, and other undocumented communities. Our goal was to reach out to anyone, and as long as they're human beings, that's all, that needed support during this time.
Maalini Ramalo, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us for another episode of IOHR TV. From myself, Margherita Kergasacchi, until next time, goodbye.